Mining is an uncertain, hazardous business, a hunt for something in the dark. Those words were written in the Bodie Standard Weekly 104 years ago. Here in Bodie, empty buildings are a reminder of just how uncertain a business mining is and was. In 1859, a small group of prospectors explored the foothills north of Mono Lake. When they returned to the mining town of Monoville, they brought back several sacks of dirt, rich in gold ore. One of those early prospectors was W.S. Bodie. But Bodie didn't last long. He died in a November snowstorm less than a year after mining the first claim in the town that would eventually be named after him. The mining town of Bodie grew by leaps and bounds, and by 1880, more than 8,000 hardy souls called it home. And as Bodie grew, so did its famous outlaw miner reputation, the Bad Men from Bodie. At one point, the town averaged 6 murders a week, and every Saturday night was an adventure in the Wild West. Fortunately, the Bad Men from Bodie also had a reputation for being poor marksmen. One story tells how 2 men fired 10 shots at each other, toe to toe. After the gunfight, both bad men walked away. The streets are pretty quiet now. Bodie still has a wicked climate, but all its famous bad men are in their graves. This is Chinatown, where most of the Chinese workers were forced to live apart from the rest of the community. The Chinese ran laundries, peddled vegetables, and at one time brought in and sold all of the firewood in town. You had to be tough to live in Bodie in the 1800s. Winter temperatures can drop to 40 below here, and insulation from the cold was as simple as an extra blanket. Today the town stands in a state of arrested decay. Nothing changes. You can still see where children studied the alphabet before they too went to work in the mines. Much of Bodie remains where it was left, but what is left of Bodie is very little. Most of Bodie is built out of pine lumber, and in 1892 a major fire broke out. Ironically, the blaze started across the street from the town's fire station, but the water lines were clogged, and much of Bodie's business section was destroyed. Main Street. This was once a solid mile of 2-story frame buildings, not unlike Mammoth's Main Street is right now. And if you think Mammoth has a lot of bars for a town its size, consider this. Bodie at its peak supported more than 65 saloons and 3 separate breweries, the Bodie, the Pioneer, and Pat Fahey's. And after a long day's work in the mines, a cold beer was almost worth its weight in gold. But it was mining, not beer, that drew crowds to Bodie, and the Fortuna vein was the most profitable vein around. The Standard Mining Company followed the gold and silver Fortuna more than 1,200 feet. The Fortuna eventually faulted out, but there are still some folks who think that it leads to the largest gold vein in the world. When you walk through the streets of Bodie today, you do a lot of peeping. Through windows, keyholes, anywhere you can catch a glimpse of life a century ago. J.S. Kane lived in this house, a wealthy investor who bought up much of Bodie in the 1890s. The town jail is surprisingly small. Like most mining camps, most men were more interested in gold than justice. As Bodie's fortunes declined, so did its population. Stagecoaches blew into town empty and left full. By 1915, many of Bodie's mines had closed, as ore deposits ran dry and the gold rush slowed down. What remains today in Bodie is only about 5% of what this town looked like in its heyday, and as Mammoth Lakes experiences its own boom, you have to wonder what our community will look like 100 years from today.